All right, let's do it live on a Tuesday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is something so much more. He is the great Z. How you living, buddy?
I'm doing okay, brother. I'm doing okay. We've got a day removed from what happened on Sunday, and now we know that we're just ready here to turn the page and start to take a look ahead to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're still 4-2. I think we've all been able to kind of shed some of that, visceral, emotional reaction to what happened in Pittsburgh. Was it good? No. Will we break it down further? Yes. With who? The Hoff coming your way for this first hour. Right. So that's going to be exciting, but I'm doing okay. How you doing, man?
Well, I was going to say the sun came up, but it didn't. The sun did not come up today. It's just been gray. So sadly, no vitamin D at all today. We just suffer in the gray. But it was interesting. I watched the Monday Night Football games last night. First of all, it's great. I love a game starting at 5 is an incredible win.
Perfect.
But I can't do them both. Luckily for me, the Cardinals put it away, and I didn't have to watch the second half of the Cowboys game. But I loved the first game, and I did wake up this morning, and I look at the standings, and I saw us 5th in the AFC, and I went, okay, we're okay. You're all right. You are the NFL. It's no coincidence that the rise of television and sports talk radio have coincided with the rise of the NFL, because it really is the perfect sports talk sport. You get one game to dissect and break down what happened and what's going to happen, and you get all week to do it. And every one of these games feels like the biggest deal in the history of the world, and in the moment they are, but then they pass. And then you wake up and you go, we're 4-2, we're going to Cincinnati this week, you got Oakland after that. A simple split, you're at 5-3 at the halfway point, and anybody would have signed up for that at the start of the season. I think you can do more than that. I think both these games are very winnable, and I think now you're talking 6-2. So while yesterday was tough, and we're going to go through some of it with Joe as well, and Sunday was not enjoyable, every single thing that you want to achieve is in front of you. And while this is disappointing, all of the goals are still there. And right now, you're a playoff team in the AFC.
Right, you would be the first wild card right now in the AFC.
That's right.
And so you are in a very good spot. You have handled the business you've needed to handle, and of course, you have come up short in what you want to see is the evolution, that trampoline game that catapults you into another stratosphere. Right now, we're a good, not great football team, and we're capable of beating other good, not great football teams. And thus far, we have not beaten what you would call the two great football teams on our schedule. And unfortunately, we weren't even competitive with them. Those games, ironically, started very similarly. An interception on our first drive on a slant to the left, one that was returned for a touchdown, one that set up a touchdown. That's the NFL. That happens. You get yourself in a hole. It's typically not very easy to climb out of it. And so we still are searching for what I would call that third path to victory. We've won with, turnovers. We've won with running the football. We've won with efficient, capitalization on those turnovers, efficiency, taking care of the football. We've even won a game where our defense outscored the opponent's offense in the second half of the game, which would have been against the Indianapolis Colts. So we're in a great spot. This is what, again, I said that before. If you played the schedule game, this is where you would have wanted to be, 4-2 after 6 games. And that would have been probably in a good scenario. I don't know how many people could have looked at our schedule and been like, we're going to be 5-1. We're going to beat one of the Ravens or the Steelers on the road, and we're going to win every home game and beat the Cowboys in Dallas.
Most people done cartwheels at 3-3. Sure, honestly, when you looked at the first 6, you'd been very satisfied at 3-3.
Absolutely.
You're a game ahead of that.
And we thought that was kind of the goal, was to get to, this stretch at home where you have the Raiders, and then you end up have the bye, and then you end up playing a couple more games at home in a row. I think it's Philly, and I want to say Houston in there. And that was the stretch that you thought you really had to make your move. And it's still, you've really positioned yourself well for that. This Bengals team cannot be overlooked. This is a game that you really do want to bounce back and get. It's critical to get a sweep in the division, to put your record in the division at 2-2, and it was show that you can win on the road in the division, because you have not won on the road in the division since last year in Baltimore. You had a loss in Pittsburgh, loss in Cincy, right. So you've lost 4 in a row in the division on the road. You'd love to end that.
What did you make of the games last night? Did you take them both in? Did you take part of one? How did you handle your viewing? 5 o'clock came quick.
5 o'clock was great. Came very quickly, and I couldn't be more pleased with it. Although I felt like it threw my body clock off a little bit, because when that game was getting, winding down, it's, at halftime of that game, it was dark outside already.
Correct.
And so it felt like a Monday night game. So my body's like, wait a second, is it 10 right now? And I'm like, no, it's not.
Sleepy time.
It's 7:30. Let's relax. Pump the brakes. So I enjoyed the first game. I loved seeing Clyde Edwards-Helaire, very motivated, obviously, by the signing of Le'Veon Bell, saying, no, not so fast. Like the rumors of my demise, greatly exaggerated. I thought Josh Allen struggled a little bit in the rain there.
Yes.
And that's a team that, again, I put in a similar boat with us. I do think Josh Allen is capable of winning a game by himself with his skill set, but that's a team that is more comfortable playing from ahead than it is from behind. And most teams are, but there are certain teams that are not bothered by that.
Yeah. They are certainly one of those teams, and that these are 2 weekends in a row for Buffalo that are a little dicey. And with that, we bring on the Hoff, the great Joe Thomas, joining us. He was on the early Monday Night Football crew, of course, and we welcome in. Hoff, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, guys. How are you?
We're hanging in there, pal. We really enjoyed the doubleheader yesterday. That's nice to get football at 5 o'clock in the East. Your impressions of what you saw from Kansas City and Buffalo, and now 2 straight weeks where Buffalo, and we talked about this on the show. We'll find out how good Buffalo is. Tennessee, Kansas City, and then you look at really 4 of their next 5 are really tough as well. I think Seattle's in there, New England in there. Some really tough games ahead. What did you make of what you saw last night?
Well, I think it was really interesting to watch Kansas City find a new way to win, right? We're kind of used to Patrick Mahomes chucking the ball all over the field. Him and Andy Reid coming up with those Star Wars passing attack route concepts where they've got their fast guys sprinting down the field and everything's open. But, Buffalo really made a conscious effort. They said, we're willing to live and die by the run game. We just don't want Patrick Mahomes to be able to beat us over the top. So they rushed 4. They blitzed almost 0 times the entire night. And they played coverage, and it was really a fun battle to watch to see if Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' patience was going to be able to keep up because they just had to run the football. And thankfully for Kansas City, their offensive line did a great job blocking. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a budding star at running back. He had an outstanding night, over 150 yards rushing. And I think it proved to the rest of the NFL that the Chiefs are a better team than they were last year because they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. It doesn't always just have to be with the arm of Patrick Mahomes. They're willing to run the ball 40 times a game if that's what it takes, if that's how defenses are going to play them. So it was a really impressive outing by the Chiefs. And also it was a little bit disappointing from the Bills. Offensively, they'd been really good for the first 4 games of the season. They hit a little road bump last week, and they weren't able to bounce back. And I think there's going to be some more pressure on Josh Allen in the upcoming week. To have him bounce back, and the more weeks that he goes playing poorly, the more question marks are going to pop up after starting the season for the first 4 weeks of the season as one of the guys who was in that MVP conversation.
Joe, as we talked about, last night a little bit, let's talk about us just really quickly. Your first kind of reaction. We've talked about it. We'll get into more of the specifics, but this was a game. This was a big one for the Browns. It was meaningful. 4-1 versus 4-0. AFC North wanting to show that you can hang with the Steelers, who I think might be the most complete team in the AFC. And it didn't go that way. Just as you're watching it, what's it like in that locker room? Because obviously there was a lot of frustration. They wanted to make a statement, and a statement, unfortunately, was not made.
Yeah, obviously, I'm as disappointed as you guys were. There was a lot of stuff flying around the house after that Steelers game, and it wasn't just chairs. It was also F-bombs. And the kids had to keep clear of me because it did mean something more than the last games that we played against Pittsburgh, because there were 2 teams that were kind of vying for who's going to be on top of the AFC North. And the Browns, they didn't come to play, and that was the disappointing part to me. Not that they necessarily lost, but that it just looked like they were beaten in all 3 phases of the game. And when you walk away from that, you say, hey, Pittsburgh's clearly the better team right now. We've got to make a lot of progress before the next time we play them. Otherwise, the result is going to be the same.
Joe, it's the Nate and I talked about this a lot yesterday, but it wasn't even. It's not losing to Pittsburgh. I wanted it more than any game since I've been doing this show. Truly, I wanted that win so desperately because I wanted to reignite that rivalry, and I wanted to be a worthy adversary to them in that rivalry. And I think you got to beat them over there in order for that to happen. But it's not even that, because I thought this would be a tough matchup. And Z and I and you, we kind of outlined how this was going to could be a tough matchup for us last week leading into it. But the lack of competitiveness is alarming. This is now twice where you've played Super Bowl caliber teams in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and in both instances, it felt like it was in the bag relatively quickly for the opposition. And beyond that, they're not just two Super Bowl contenders, Joe. They're the two teams in our division, and so we're going to have to deal with them a lot over the next few years. And the gap still looks pretty big, and the lack of competitiveness was alarming. If you're on that team and now this has happened twice, how can you fix it? How do you make sure it doesn't happen again? And were you alarmed at all by just the lack of competitiveness?
Yeah, because I thought we had kind of taken a huge step once we beat Indianapolis. Because I think everybody that watches the AFC is looking at Indianapolis and saying, this is a pretty good team. They've got a really good defense. They can stop the run. They can rush the passer. They've got a great offensive line. Obviously, everybody knows about Phillip Rivers and the job that he's done throughout his career. They've got weapons at receiver. They look like a total and a complete team. And the Browns went in and they beat them. They beat them solidly. And so I think the optimism was really high because, the Browns did not look good against the Ravens, but it was easy to excuse because it was the first game of Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield's relationship. And, it was tough with the pandemic shortened training camp. They had a lot to learn and not a lot of time to learn it. And so you can excuse the first game of the season and then you rip off this nice little roll and including a cherry on the top when you beat the Indianapolis Colts. You're feeling really good. And it was really the next big test for the Browns. And it was the test of, are they willing to be able to go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the AFC, and how are they going to look, right? You want them to win, of course, but it's how you look at this point in the season that says a lot about where you are. And the Browns didn't look good, and I think that, to me, puts a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield and this team going down to Cincinnati, right? Because Cincinnati was a team that they beat pretty handily earlier in the season on Thursday Night Football. But Cincinnati's a lot better team right now than they were at that point in the season. I think they've figured out that maybe throwing Joe Burrow 60 times a game is probably not a good idea behind a patchwork quilt offensive line. And so they're starting to run the football a little bit. They're getting a little bit smarter with how they play. They're getting some guys back healthy on defense that they didn't have early on in the season. So this is going to be a much better test for the Browns than it was earlier in the season. And it's going to be really important for Baker to show progress and this offense to show progress after some of the issues that had shown up last year showed up again for Baker and the Browns, specifically that footwork in the pocket, that tentativeness, especially when you make that early mistake like he did, throw that pick six early in the game, and he wasn't able to bounce back. His confidence wasn't able to bounce back for the rest of the game. So this game has a lot of meaning. And dare I say, is this the most important game of Baker's career so far? I think it might be, just because he needs this bounce back. This is his season to prove that he can be the guy long term, and he needs this bounce back game in the AFC North against Joe Burrow, proving that you can win a game that you should win against the Cincinnati Bengals and bounce back after a bad performance.
Yeah, and when you think about, that performance and you think about just kind of the questions that arise, right? What did you see? You mentioned footwork. What did you see from Baker Mayfield in the pocket in the drop back game? It's clear when we get him on the edges, he has success in that bootleg, the keepers, the rollouts, etc. You just can't do that all the time, and it becomes significantly less effective and impactful when you're down and it's an obvious passing situation. The effectiveness of that boot is lost somewhat. So at some point, and I think the evolution that our fans want to see is, we're going to have to win a game where Baker Mayfield's going to be asked to drop back and play predominantly from the pocket, 30 plus times in a game. And the two games that he's had to do that or follow that kind of a script, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, haven't gone well. So Hoff, what do you see when you're watching the tape of Baker when it comes to just his ability in what we would call a traditional drop back pocket passing game?
So here's why it's so important for Baker to become a better passer in the pocket, in rhythm, because teams are figuring out the same thing that you said, right, Nathan? That right now Baker is very proficient outside the pocket, bootlegs, nakeds, play action type passes where he's able to get outside the pocket. And when you get outside the pocket, you're basically reading half the field, or even sometimes just reading one receiver or two receivers. It's outside the pocket, Now I'm reading top down or down up. Like either get the first down or take a shot. Or now that I'm rolling out, all I have to do is look at Odell, and I don't have to look at the whole field. I don't have to look at all the coverage pre-snap. So when they
I think we may have lost the hop there. Let's see if we can get him back. You had asked the question about how to use him in a pocket, and this was the thing we've talked about. Was it's the last thing that we want to see. We have a perfect script that you can follow, and when the script works, it delivers a win. But when you go off script and you have to chase, what does that look like? And unfortunately for us right now, it doesn't look very good,
No.
and it's limiting your ability, obviously, of what you can do. All right, we will work to get Joe back. Obviously, we'll have him back. This is the Joe Thomas Hour. He will be back. We'll have him answer that question. We have some other word association to get to as the game goes along, some highlights from the game as well, some positives you can take from it. Lots still to come on that front. This is the Joe Thomas Hour. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Welcome back into the Joe Thomas Hour on Cleveland Browns Daily. 21 years ago, my friend Alex started out of a small garage in Lakewood to celebrate those humble beginnings. In that garage, Alex having a mattress garage sale. It's the same high-quality mattress that they always have. It's just at lower prices. Anything mattress related, in fact, they're going to have you covered. We're talking about pillow top, memory foam, gel foam, all the sizes. They also have 0% financing available. During the garage sale, get a Sierra Sleep Queen for $3.99, a Kenilworth Queen pillow top for just $4.99, and Oakmont Queen double-sided pillow top for just $7.99. They are in stock. They're ready to deliver. Plus, there's more great sales on mattresses and really everything at Northeast Factory Direct. That's how they roll. West 140th Street in Cleveland, Lakeland Boulevard in Euclid, or Freeway Drive in Macedonia. The Clearance Center also in Maple Heights, or online anytime at northeastfactorydirect.com. We do have the Hoff back. Joe, you were answering Nathan's question about the pocket and Baker in the pocket and what you saw there before we lost you.
Yeah, you guys should have heard this Hall of Fame explanation. It was probably the best take of my entire career. Yeah. I was worried because I'm hearing an echo in my ear, and all of a sudden the echo went away, and I thought for a second, oh, well, that's kind of nice. They fixed the echo. And then I realized after 5 minutes of giving the greatest dictionary encyclopedia answer that nobody was listening. But I'll remember that one forever. And here's take two at it. So here's the importance for this week, and especially for Baker. And dare I say this might be the most important game of his career, because he needs to be able to show that, A, he can bounce back from a tough performance like he had last week against the Steelers, but B, the NFL is starting to figure out, as they get a book on everybody, but specifically quarterbacks, what you do well and what you don't do well. And what you do well, they're not going to give you any of that. They're going to give you a steady dose of what you don't do well. I'll take you back to my first few years in the NFL. We had Brady Quinn as a quarterback, great friend of mine, great dude. But one thing he struggled with was accuracy down the field. So what did teams start doing? They played their coverage up tight to the line of scrimmage, and he dared him to throw the football down the field. He struggled with that, and that was part of the reason he didn't make it in the NFL, right? With Baker, what teams are starting to realize is, hey, he's pretty good when he's able to get outside the pocket, when he's able to bootleg, he's running those naked, those play action passes, and he's able to read either half the field or one or two receivers where he can get outside. He doesn't have to worry about the look pre-snap, and all he has to do is look, is Odell open? Is anybody going to undercut that route? Or, okay, I can either take the home run. If the home run is covered because they got a deep safety, well, now the way the flood of the route concept is, that means that the sticks is going to be open. And so those are easy reads for him to make those completions. He throws very accurately on the run. That's great. Well, what teams are going to start doing is they're going to start pressuring off the edges. They're going to take those bootlegs away, and they're going to say, hey, Baker, we're going to force you to stay in the pocket, because if you try to roll out, we're going to sack you, because we're taking away the normal rush angles by the defensive ends and the outside linebackers, and we're going to be running those guys up the field so you can't roll out. So they're going to say, Baker, beat us from in the pocket, because they're going to roll the dice and say, hey, we haven't seen you be able to identify the defense in the coverage pre-snap consistently and be able to consistently throw the football where it needs to, on time and on the money. And so this week, against a lesser quality Cincinnati Bengals defense, Baker has the opportunity to show that growth, that he can throw from in the pocket, that he can make plays in rhythm, and that if, God forbid, some play at the beginning of the game goes wrong, he's not going to lose his footwork, and he's not going to lose the confidence in his eyes to know what the defense is in pre-snap, because that was one of the things we saw last week against Pittsburgh, right? He throws that early pick six, and then all of a sudden he starts getting happy feet in the pocket. He doesn't trust his eyes. He doesn't trust what he's seeing pre-snap, because teams are starting to rotate a lot of coverages from what they're showing pre-snap to what happens after the snap. And so this week is huge to show that growth, not only for himself and the guys that are making the decisions in the Cleveland Browns organization, but the rest of the NFL, that you can't play him just one way, because he can beat you from inside the pocket and he can beat you outside the pocket on the run.
So, Joe, what it seems like to me is that what's going on here, both for Baker, for coach, and for the offense and everybody, it's a little bit of a quarterback rehabilitation, because many of the things that you just described are things that he did as a rookie. He did throw from inside the pocket as a rookie. He did rip it down the middle of the field as a rookie. He did identify things quickly and see it. And you remember some of those games against Denver, Cincinnati here in the home finale.
Atlanta.
Even his first game against the Jets, Atlanta, another one where he ripped it and he used the whole field and didn't have to be on the run and was comfortable in the pocket. And I think one of the things that is you got to try to figure out here, and I understand new system, again, this has not been the best situation, clearly. But you want to say, how do we get back to that? Because that's the thing that's tricky with him. Like, we have this on film where he broke Peyton Manning's touchdown record. It happened. It occurred. We witnessed it.
Yeah. So Bo, you're exactly right. The offense he was running his rookie year was not the play action bootleg get outside the pocket offense. It was a stand in the pocket, 3 receivers, throw the football offense. And so we know he can do it, but you're only as good as your last game. That's like the oldest cliche in sports. And really, you're only as good as what you have done lately for this organization. And if you can't prove you can still do it, then teams think you can't do it. It's like when I was a young player, Romeo Crennel said to us, when you're a rookie, you have to prove that you can do it. And when you're an old guy, you have to prove that you can still do it. And Baker Mayfield's not an old guy by any means, but he did it as a rookie. Now he has to prove that he can still do it. So everybody's always proven something in the NFL. And for Baker, it's trying to figure out why it worked so well when he was a rookie. And like you mentioned, that Atlanta Falcons game, my favorite moment from my post-career 3 years here was the time that they inducted that 10,363 snaps into the Ring of Honor against the Falcons. And I got to watch Baker Mayfield up close with my family torch that Falcons defense. I mean, he was on a roll. And so it's finding that lightning in a bottle, that magic that Baker has inside of him somewhere and bringing it out of him. And I think Kevin Stefanski is just the man for the job. The way that he details everything up, the way that he coaches the passing game, that's exactly what Baker needs. And I can't wait to see him on Sunday, how Kevin gets him ready and how he bounces back against the Bengals.
So I have a question for you because, first of all, not every team's going to be the Steelers, right? And not every team's going to be the Ravens. And so far, you would say we've struggled the most with 3-4 defenses, right? The 4-3 of the Washington football team, which had a great line, the 4-3 of the Colts, were 2 of his better games, at least the first half against the Colts and certainly the game against Washington. What the 3-4 does, it seems to me, against what we do schematically, is they make everything come inside, right? So sometimes it can be harder to get that wide zone, but also when they blitz the nickel as well as those outside linebackers, it's harder to boot and do anything wide, which, to your point, keeps them in the pocket. Do you think we're going to see more teams, for example, a 4-3 team, go maybe more wide 9 to try to keep him centralized and stop the edges? Because we had success running the ball for a few plays against the Steelers when we started running some duos and more inside interior running concepts, but that's not our bread and butter. And so you wonder, how does this impact not only Baker, but how does it impact the run game as well if teams are now trying to focus and funnel everything inside and eliminate the perimeter, which is really the staple of our offense?
I should have taken notes like this was a debate because that was a long question. But I will say something, Nathan. You should talk about football for a living because you know what you're talking about. And I think you hit on a great point. When Eric Mangini took over in 2009, the media asked him, what type of a defense are you going to play, right? Because he was a 3-4 guy, and he goes, I'm playing 3-4 because it just gives me more flexibility. It's just a better defense because I've got 4 linebackers and I can decide to rush any one of them. And they're more hybrid type players in that scheme. And so they're good at pass dropping and they're good at pass rushing. And that's what the Steelers had. And that's why they're a really good defense. And now I'm not standing on the table saying the 3-4 is always better than the 4-3 because it's a personnel thing. And it's what you know as a defensive coordinator. But the reason the Steelers have had a lot of success, I think they did a good job of confusing Baker pre-snap, is because when you're running a 3-4, you do have 4 linebackers, and any one of those 4 guys could drop into coverage or blitz or rush. It's not technically a blitz because it's not adding a secondary element, but that's sort of semantics, football nerdness. It's a dog if it's a linebacker. It's a blitz if it's a secondary element. But we digress here. So anyways, you have 4 linebackers, and so you can roll coverages, you can confuse, you can bring guys, you can drop guys, and you can simulate pressure, and you can get into different coverages without actually bringing more than 4 pass rushers. And so it'll be interesting to kind of follow that as we go between 3-4 defenses and 4-3 defenses and figure out, okay, is Baker better against one or the other? And why is that? Is it truly because he is getting confused by more pre-snap movement, by different looks and simulated pressures that 3-4 teams are throwing at him? Or is there something else going on here? And I think the second part of your question was a good one, and it was run-based. And, you know, that one doesn't split up quite as easy between a 4-3 and a 3-4 because you can play 4-3 and 3-4 run defenses completely differently, even though they're both 4-3 or they're both 3-4. So that's kind of like a next level chalkboard discussion. But what I will say is that if you want to take away the outside zone running scheme, you need to do it either one of 2 ways. And this is what, unfortunately, we ran into a few times in 2014 when we were not effective. One, you can get a really wide badass defensive end, a Khalil Mack, and you can just steamroll the tight end, right, if you're running to the strong side. And what that does is it forces the running back to cut back before the cutback lanes are available. If you can imagine a tight end getting pushed back into the backfield, the running back is running right at the outside butt cheek of the tight end on an outside zone scheme. And if that tight end is getting pushed back, now that running back either has to decide, I'm going to run right into his butt, or I'm going to have to back up and bubble to the outside and try to bounce it, which is bad too soon, or I have to put my foot in the ground and cut up before the offensive line has had a chance to get off their combinations at the line of scrimmage and get off their double teams and get to the linebacker. And so it's just the worst of all situations. And so that's why tight end blocking and outside zone schemes is so crucial. And if you're getting your tight end's butt kicked, you have to put two tight ends out there to double team at the point of attack. That brings in more problems because now they're going to bring another safety down towards the strong side of your formation, which makes things a little bit challenging. So that's why you got to go to some of your counters and your Y backs and a lot of your other different counters that you have in that wide zone scheme. But specifically, the Browns are set up with how they run the football, not only just to run outside zone. There's some of these outside zone schemes that all they run is outside zone and they're not good at anything else. But actually, if you look back, the success that the Browns had earlier on in the season was a lot of guard pull type schemes. Yep. It was a lot of trap type schemes. Yeah, they were still getting outside a lot of times, but it wasn't specifically outside zone. And so I think with Bill Callahan and Kevin Stefanski, they're smart and they're going to realize like, hey, if you play a wide nine against our team, there's a lot of space between that defensive tackle who lines up over the guard and an outside defensive end who's lining up outside of the tight end. That gap is huge. And so they can really utilize that gap with a lot of guard and tackle combination blocks on the defensive tackle up to the linebacker, as long as your tight ends are able to kind of hold that space. And that's why a lot of 4-3s and a lot of defenses, they don't like playing those wide nines against the running scheme because there's a lot of softness over that tackle position. There's a lot of space that running backs can get up and do. If you have those big physical running backs who run behind their football pads, who are not afraid to get their pads down and jam it up in there for 3-4 yards, and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are those type of running backs. So I don't think that's a panacea for a defense to be able to stop the Browns. I really think that would just allow the Browns to change course a little bit and start throwing in some different concepts in the run game.
And that, my friends, was a football meat sandwich.
It's graduate level. That was
grad level
awesome.
Right there. Yep.
Got carried away there. Sorry, fellas.
It's awesome.
No.
You just think about
it's really important.
It's super important. And one of the points you made was if you go back and when you watch the all 22 of that game against the Steelers, there are multiple plays where Bud Dupree ends up covering Jarvis Landry because of either a disguise. Now, there could have been a leverage tell pre-snap that you'd like to pick up on, but Khalil Mack never ends up covering Jarvis Landry under really any circumstance except for maybe once in a game they try to do some crazy zone dog. But that's I think the trickeration, as it were, that ends up playing a role in this. And you go back to the interception here where it was a cover one robber type of a look, but Dupree is the one covering Landry. The ball comes to the middle, ends up in Fitzpatrick. And the first interception against Baltimore, the guy who hit it was actually Calais Campbell, the opposite side defensive end who came across the formation in the 3-4. So you're right. I think it does create much more confusion, and that is something that is interesting. Good news is 4-3 defense on tap this week, and a defense that Baker has historically lit up.
And one without Watt, Nathan, Dupree, and Hayward, which also helps.
Nathan, you make a good point in the 3-4 is one of the things that they do a good job of is at the line of scrimmage, they're trying to drop guys into passing lanes. Like you mentioned, Calais Campbell, he's not covering Jarvis one-on-one. It's not a man coverage. What they're trying to do is they're trying to give those guys zone drops that are easy where they can read the quarterback's eyes. They can get to a level about 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, guy down at the line of scrimmage, disrupt the timing of passing concepts, but also change the obvious passing lanes. When you have a 4-3 defense and you've got a nose guard and a defensive tackle that always are lining up either to the strength or to the weakness, depending on if they're an over front or an under front. Try not to get too much in the weeds here, but basically those passing lanes are pretty consistent throughout the game. They're either, between the guard and the tackle on one side, or they're between the guard and the center on the other side, or sometimes, they're outside the tackle, depending on where the defensive ends line up. But they're consistent throughout the game for the most part. But when you're playing a 3-4, now you got guys dropping out all over the place. You got guys that are looping and twisting and dogging. And so those passing lanes change. And so for a shorter quarterback like Baker, that's got to be a little unsettling, unnerving, right? When you don't know, all right, now I'm thinking about, okay, what's the coverage? Where's my passing lanes? What's my concept? Where am I reading? And all of a sudden they're changing at the last minute. That's when you get a little bit of that hesitation that really showed up last week against the Steelers.
Well said, sir. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. West now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at westhiring.com. We continue with the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily. Play a little word association, go around the league as well, start to peek ahead at the Bengals and some of the challenges they provide. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Elk and Elk Serious Lawyers for serious injuries. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today for a free case review. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns as we continue on with the Joe Thomas Hour. Gentlemen, do we do game balls on losses? How do we feel about this?
I don't feel good about that one,
No,
to be totally honest.
I don't need
Same.
that. No.
Same. Yeah.
I think you either win or you don't win. And if you win, you celebrate as a team. If you lose, nobody celebrates. I don't care if you had a great game.
Yeah, same. All right. It is said by the Hoff, and so it is so. All right, let's play a little word association then, guys. Let's start with the Browns' offensive line, Joe. And, boy, Pittsburgh had a ton of pressure in this game. You knew that they would bring it, and they did. What did you see from this offensive line?
Well, it wasn't their best game last week. They had their biggest challenge, and I think some of the struggles early on, they tend to snowball when you get into those situations where they're obvious passing situations. You're not running the football anymore when you're down big, and when you've got Defensive Player of the Year candidates out there at outside linebacker like T.J. Watt and a Pro Bowl candidate there with Bud Dupree, things can get a little bit sideways. But for me, I'm going to say bounce back. Just like the word we talked about with Baker, this offensive line needs a big bounce back week this week against the Bengals, who don't have quite as much talent in the front seven, and they've got a lot of weaknesses in the running game that I think the Browns can exploit, and feel really good about coming out of that game in Cincinnati on Sunday.
Yeah, and Wyatt Teller potentially back for that one as well, Z.
Yeah, which would be huge. Hub played great against them. Remember on Thursday night, that was the game Conklin didn't play. Hub played right tackle in that game, could play right guard. Certainly a much easier challenge, though Geno Atkins is back. I wanted to ask you really quickly, though, about something that Pittsburgh does that I didn't see anybody else do. It seemed to me that Watt and Dupree, now Watt sometimes they would be right on the line of scrimmage, and I would say T.J. Watt was offsides on a couple of those plays that were not called, or they were just unbelievable jumps. But I always, as you know, I think of from an offensive lineman's perspective, obviously, so he had to be offsides. But they also had times where they would start those guys about a yard or two off of the line of scrimmage. So they had almost a running start to their collision at the line of scrimmage. And that power, that violence, I'm not used to seeing, even though I'm down there for all of these games. It just seems something almost unique to them. And is that unique? Am I seeing things? And what challenges does that present when they play that way?
Well, it's really challenging because they're building momentum pre-snap. And as you guys know, because you're football savants like you are, on offense, you can't move before the snap. But on defense, they're allowed to move. So they're going to try to take every advantage they possibly can. I'll never forget, it was probably one of my most memorable in a bad way snaps of my career is in Pittsburgh going against James Harrison. And he was getting subbed in late, and because we had made a quick sub. And so he was on the sideline. He came out there. And he had just stepped onto the field and got like 3 steps onto the field when we snapped the football. And so he's like running onto the field trying to get to his position. And right as we are about to snap the football, he's getting close to the line of scrimmage. So he's on like a full sprint. Right as we snap it, he gets right to the line of scrimmage. And I'm kicking back in my pass set. And here he comes. And so basically what he did is he had started his bull rush from the opponent's bench. And by the time he got to me, he was running his 4.5 40, and he lowered his head and put his helmet right up under my chin and gave me those Tweety birds that you see in cartoons in my head, because he had built up so much momentum that the devastating bull rush that he normally has when we're both starting from a stop at the snap, coming from the sideline, was absolutely devastating. And I don't know if they watched that film to come up with the technique that the Steelers are doing right now, but if you look, a lot of times that happens when the shot clock is winding down, because on defense, they know that if they're listening to the snap count, if there's 10 seconds left, it may or may not get snapped. But if there's 2 seconds left and the Browns are wide 80 set, and all of a sudden it's either snap or get a delay game, those dudes are going. Like, those ponies are in their stall and they're getting ready to go no matter what happens. And we saw it, I think it was last weekend with TJ. Like, he just jumps when the shot clock is getting close to 0 because he knows you have to snap it. And a lot of times if those guys are a couple yards off the line of scrimmage, they're going to start building up a little bit of steam pre-snap, because they don't have to worry about stopping at the line of scrimmage because that ball is getting snapped no matter what. And so, I mean, it's smart defense. It's putting a man and giving him a little bit of energy pre-snap, giving him a little bit of speed before the ball is snapped, because he knows, hey, you guys have to snap it on 0 or you're going to get a delay of game.
Yeah, they're a master class in the 3-4. Like, they just keep adding things. They've been doing it forever. and so you can just keep adding to it at that point, and you already have the base. It's already there, and they take time to teach guys how to do it. They don't bail on guys. They continue to develop them, and then they get them to where they need to be. And we see this countless, especially at the outside linebacker position. Let's give it to you on this one, Z. Let's go with Odell Beckham Jr.
Fiery, passionate, and completely dissatisfied with disgusted with losing.
Yeah, and I think fairly so. And you've heard a lot of the guys, Joe, talk about some of the things Odell was talking about, and he was really trying to get the offense fired up, is what he was trying to do. Say we're better than this, and that lands. I think the one thing with him though is the camera finds him.
Of course,
it just does. Anything he does is caught on camera, and sometimes not interpreted the way probably it's intended for his teammates. As we move it along, we talked a lot about the Browns defense, guys. Let's talk a little bit, about the Browns defense. Hoff, let's go to you on this one. Let's go to the Browns defense. Mash unit, but really had a couple of stops and then probably just wore out in the second half. What did you see?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you consider their opponent, you consider the amount of injuries that they've had. I thought they held their own pretty well, and had the offense been able to get some more sustained drives, give them a blow, I think they probably would have held up pretty well, and they would have come out of the game thinking, we did better than expected. And that's all you can ever ask from your players. I don't care if you're a backup guard or if you're the starting quarterback. Everybody needs to play at their expectation or better. And then typically the outcome's pretty good. And defensively, those guys were pretty solid. I mean, you can nitpick here and there and say they should have done better. But really what happens is if your offense isn't sustaining drives and they're turning the football over, defensively, you're just going to wear out. I don't care how great a shape you're in, and I don't care what kind of defense you play. If you're on the field for 75-plus snaps and you're not getting many rests in between those snaps, you're going to get a little worn out, and a great offense like the Steelers is going to take advantage of that.
When I watch our defense right now, there's one thing, if you're going to say, that concerns me, and forget the back end stuff like that. That's where you're a little bit banged up. You had 2 of your safeties down, although I thought Sendejo probably had one of his better games, missed a tackle and run support, but from not allowing the ball over his head, had one of his better games, and Sheldrick certainly had a nice accounting of himself also, is up front. And Joe, Miles is getting double and triple teamed on the reg. And we do not have another defensive lineman with a sack since week 3. That seems like a problem to me.
Well, here's the issue. Miles, even though he's not getting in the stat sheet, is making a huge impact for the exact reason that you just said, because teams have to double him. They're taking 2 of their dudes to block 1 of ours. So just by simple math, now we have more guys that are in coverage. We got more guys elsewhere on the field that can now double their guys. And so it's a huge advantage whether he's getting a sack or not. I think the challenge is when you get those games where you're not winning. If you're not clearly in the lead or you're not close down the stretch where you're forcing the other team's offense to be in passing situations, sacks are just hard to come by in the NFL because teams throw the football on time generally. Yeah, you've got rookie and young quarterbacks who hold on to the football and they get sacked, or quarterbacks that are new. We saw it a little bit with Andy Dalton. He was getting confused last night, so he's getting hit and getting sacked. Now, granted, part of that's offensive line play, but a lot of times confusion at the quarterback position leads to holding on to the football, which leads to giving the defensive line an opportunity to sack you. But Ben Roethlisberger statistically gets rid of the football faster than any quarterback in the NFL this season. And so you're just not going to get there. I don't even care if you're not being blocked. If he's throwing the football in 2.3 seconds and you're a defensive end and you're outside of the tackle or the tight end, you just can't close that distance in less than 2.5 seconds. That's just too much space to close. And so that's why I was kind of expecting the Browns to put Miles inside a little bit more, knowing how quickly Ben Roethlisberger was throwing the football and knowing that David DeCastro was injured at right guard. I thought it's natural to put your best player inside, give him a shorter distance to get to the quarterback to try to make an impact on some of those quicker throws. But they ended up keeping him on the outside, which was fine because they had to double team him a lot. And what the strategy on defense for the Browns was take away those short throws. And I think for the most part, it worked really well. And then you saw, Ben Roethlisberger, he gets a paycheck too. Their offensive coordinator, Randy Fichtner, he gets a paycheck too. He realized that and said, okay, they're taking away all those quick throws. They're trying to make us hold on to the football a little longer to give Miles an opportunity to sack the quarterback. Well, what are we going to do? We'll double Miles and we'll double move on the outside. And that's when they hit that touchdown pass down the sideline from Big Ben. I can't remember who caught it from the Steelers. But, I mean, it's that cat and mouse game that's going to go back and forth. And you need to be in close games to get sacks in the NFL, really, for the most part, when you're going against a veteran quarterback.
Absolutely so. From a veteran quarterback to a rookie who's playing like a veteran, we'll take a look at that Cincinnati game. The second matchup of that series will take place this Sunday. Take a look at that. Go around the league quickly as well. It is the Joe Thomas Hour, Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Brilliant Electric Sign Company, Northeast Ohio's largest full-service sign company, serving their clients for 191 years. Contact the experts at Brilliant Electric Sign to provide you state-of-the-art signage solutions. Going to grow your business. Visit them at brilliantsign.com. All right, gentlemen, let's move along to Cincinnati and take a peek. Here's what's changed for them since the first time we played them. Number one, they've got Mixon and they're getting him involved in the game. Now he was banged up in the Colts game, so it'll be interesting to see where that is. T. Higgins is now a big time part of their offense. They found A.J. Green, and Joe Burrow continues to get better and better. Z mentioned Geno Atkins coming back, and I think you're going to get a much more competitive Cincinnati team this Sunday than you got on Thursday night, and that one gave you about all you could handle. You felt like if they would have got the ball back, you could have been in trouble. But you're going to get a good Cincinnati test on Sunday, I do believe, Joe.
Yeah, I think they're starting to realize who they are, and they're starting to remember that Joe Burrow, yeah, he looks really good. He's exceeding expectations, but he's still a rookie. We don't want to give him 60 throws a game. So they're getting that run game a little bit more involved. They had almost 100 yards rushing last week. And so having a little bit more balance is going to help an offensive line that's not great. And the big thing is when I watched Joe Burrow last weekend, he's understanding the progression, the understanding that in the NFL you can't hold on to the ball for 4 seconds every time or you're going to get killed. And so getting rid of the football is an important part of learning how to play quarterback in the NFL. I think that's the number one thing you see when you see rookie quarterbacks get in the NFL. They're used to college, especially those guys that went to big-time schools that won national championships. They had these great offensive lines that gave them 4 or 5 seconds, so they just stood back there, and they waited till their dudes got open. They threw it to the open man, and they scored all sorts of touchdowns. But that's not the way the NFL works. Joe Burrow is making tremendous strides. He's looking like a franchise quarterback already, and he's shown great progress already in his young career, and he's definitely going to be a much better version of himself this weekend than the first time they saw him.
You mentioned Joe Mixon and what he's meant to this offense. The game that they won this year, he ran for over 100 yards in 7 career meetings with the Browns. The Bengals are 2-1 when Mixon runs for 100 yards. They're 1-3 when he does not. And you're right. They have got to try to keep, Burrow from throwing it a ton because he's had 2 games this year. He's been sacked 7 or more times already. And I think, if you're the Browns, you got to take a little bit of a page. And frankly, I gave that stat, which I didn't love, which is that since week 3, the Browns do not have a defensive lineman not named Myles Garrett with a sack. But you do it. Redwine's gotten to the quarterback. M.J. Stewart's gotten to the quarterback. Your dime, your Nick Tavier Thomas, your nickel and safety blitzes have worked. You go back and watch some of that tape from Baltimore. I think they had, 5 different DBs with a sack in that game? And so you're going to have to kind of, mix that kind of stuff up. But that's a recipe, I think, for success. Limit Mixon, get them in 3rd and longs, and then pin your ears back and go after the rookie behind, as you mentioned, a patchwork quilt offensive line.
Yeah, he's been awfully impressive, and they're getting their pass. They're a little more diversified in their passing game now with Green back into it. And Higgins, who wasn't a factor when we played them here, now is. I mean, he's getting 10, 12 targets. He's catching 8 balls a game, so it's going to be a much bigger challenge there. Let's go around the league from Week 6. And the news today that Ryan Fitzpatrick is out, Joe. Tua Tagovailoa in. Fitzpatrick has been incredible. And they are 3-3, and they're in the thick of a playoff race. They're in the thick of the AFC East. Are you surprised that the Dolphins made this move now?
It is surprising. I mean, they saw Tua complete 2 passes for 4 yards last week, so I can understand how they really thought he's got what it takes now. But I've always been a big believer in the Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes type quarterback development approach. There's no reason to rush into things, especially this guy's coming off a hip surgery. He hasn't been hit since 2 years ago. So there's no reason to throw him out there before he's ready, because if you throw a young quarterback out there truly before they're ready, one, you can risk physical injury, especially a guy like Tua who's coming off that injury and who's had a lot of ankle problems. If he's not properly reading the defense and getting rid of the football, he's going to look like Joe Burrow did earlier in the season, where he's just standing back there, he's confused, he's getting slaughtered. And I think he had an opportunity to really sit there and watch and learn from Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's playing great football. There was no reason to take Ryan Fitzpatrick out of the game. I can understand if your starter is not playing very well, he's not giving the rest of the team the ability to grow, because as a quarterback, you need to be delivering the football to who should get the ball and where it should go as far as like ball placement. And if you're not doing that, you're not giving those receivers, you're not giving those guys that are your pass catchers an ability to get better. But Fitzpatrick was doing that in spades. He was playing great ball. And so it's kind of a head scratcher as to why they would make that decision right now. I don't really agree with it, but I guess Tua can make me eat crow a little bit if he goes out there and balls out and leads them to the playoffs.
You see, it was an interesting comment you saw from Pelissero where the source with the Dolphins said, well, it's just time. And I thought, boy, he must be doing something in practice that just makes it abundantly clear that he's an upgrade.
I mean, all Fitzpatrick's done the last 2 weeks is whoop the Niners and beat the Jets 24-0. So it's not something he's not doing. I think that was their plan all along. When he's 100%, he's going to take over regardless of what's going on. You got the bye week to use to prepare him to get ready. So clearly that's what they're doing. I'm going to quote my guy Dan Orlovsky, though, because this is something I think that is relevant. And yes, and as he says, the Dolphins' offensive line is better than last year, but it's a massive reason why is how fast Fitz gets the ball out. Ryan Fitzpatrick's time to throw this year, 2.4 seconds, third fastest in the NFL. And so that mass, as you were talking about, Joe, with Ben getting it out, he was at 2.3. It's hard to get to the quarterback when they're doing that. I would be hard-pressed to think a rookie is going to, your point, what they're used to in college, everything, get the ball out as quickly as Ryan Fitzpatrick was, which could, that's going to be an adjustment period, not only for him, but for that offense that, frankly, with Devontae Parker, Gesicki's had some good games. They've got Myles Gaskin is running well. They've been pretty good lately, and now you're changing up really the main engine of an offense, which is the quarterback.
Yeah, you risk slamming the brakes onto an offense that is growing and progressing and starting to figure out what the coaching staff wants from them. And now, obviously, this was the plan all along, right? Okay, right. As soon as Tua is healthy, we're going to give him the full bye week to get ready. But I think that they could have done a little bit of a better service to Tua by just not announcing it right now. I mean, they're going to be coming off the bye playing the Rams, who are a pretty darn good football team. And maybe let's not give the Rams 2 weeks to start thinking about Tua. Let's let him prepare for Fitzpatrick, and all of a sudden, maybe on a Friday after the game plan's already in and you're ready to see one guy who's maybe not as much of a get outside the pocket and throw the football guy as Tua is, Tua's a left-handed quarterback, Fitzpatrick's a right-handed quarterback. All those things play into how you defend him from a defensive standpoint. And I would just think, why not give Tua a little bit more time, give him a little bit more of an advantage, and put him out there against a team that's not as good as the Rams, because it's got the recipe for a lot of second-guessing from the players and the fan base.
Joe, real quickly here, I know we're up against it. I want to get you out of here on this one. I just want your thoughts on what Mike Vrabel did. First of all, he's done to keep that organization together, but the taking the penalty to save 40 seconds a clock, he's manipulated the rules a couple of times now. Is he the most Belichick of the Belichick disciples?
He's also the only Belichick disciple that seems to have done pretty well for himself as a head coach. And I think you can credit that, one, to the number of places he's played. So he's got outside of the Belichick tree and kind of seen how other people do it. And I think that's enormously successful and helpful for your growth as a head coach. But also, he did spend a lot of time in New England with Belichick, and this is just quintessential Belichick. Like, those guys, they relish in studying and preparing for moments that happen and give you an opportunity maybe once every 3 or 4 years. Like, that's the pinnacle of, like, we're so prepared. We're going to waste time uncovering every single stone, no matter what it is. And if it comes up one time in 3 years, like, we're just proving to not only ourselves but the team that we will have you as prepared or better prepared than any team in the NFL. And you got to give Vrabel credit. He's done a great job with that team. He's getting them ready every single week in the face of some challenging circumstances. And he's also getting them ready for the unusual things that do happen once every blue moon in the NFL.
It's fun. It's great having you on. Great talking to you. We'll talk to you again Monday, Hoff.
What an hour.
Great stuff, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. That was a fun show.
It certainly always is when we have the Hoff on the Joe Thomas Hour on Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Live and breathe football. You know, sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find your gambling is affected by other parts of your life, we can help. Get tips at responsible gambling at keepitfunohio.com. And speaking of the Ohio Lottery, keep it fun. Doc Emmerich, an icon, certainly, and the voice of the NHL in America for the last 47 years, and just frankly, one of the best play-by-play guys of all time, and a Bowling Green alum, right? Did he go to Bowling Green, Gibbe?
He did, man.
That's what I thought, yeah.
One of the best humans, not just because he went to Bowling Green, but one of the best people that you will ever meet. And
I've heard that echoed many times.
Yeah, well, he would take time to speak with college kids. He is taking time to write fans and explain the game and educate people on the game. He's an awesome, awesome human being.
Absurdly generous with his time when he would come. It wasn't often that the Blue Jackets were, he did one of their games, but when he did, incredibly generous with his time and a prince of a man. And so he is stepping down, which got us thinking about today's Ohio Lottery Keep It Fun poll. Who is the voice of the NFL? Now, this is a tricky one because currently every network has their guy. I mean, that's very clear. And they're long established in the sense of Buck, Nance, and obviously Al Michaels, who's my guy. That's the dean for me. And it's not as much as I love the other guys, Al's just on another level for me. The only other name that I would add to that, and he hasn't done games for a long time, but it's because of the fact that I'm a man, I'm 40, is Pat Summerall.
Of course. Who
Summerall and Madden were the guys for us. As somebody who watched a lot of NFC football as a kid, they had the Sunday NFC game that I watched 9 out of 10 weeks.
Yeah, I mean that was the definitive answer would have been if this question were done 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago now?
It's been a long time. Yeah, because Madden then did games with Michaels for a while.
Right.
Before they got Collinsworth.
But Madden and Summerall would be that's football broadcasting. I think it will probably always be because it was in the formative time. Any big game of consequence, it was Madden and Summerall.
See, that's interesting. Well, and it's because 49ers
NFC.
and Montana, NFC.
Yeah.
I grew up with Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen.
Right.
And,
sure you did. Yeah, you would have.
Trumpy and
Bob Trumpy.
Don Criqui.
Don Criqui, there you go.
Criqui and Trumpy and Enberg and Olsen, and I mean, it's interesting. And now, I mean, I'm not comparing any of those guys. Dick Enberg's a legend, but
sure,
not comparing him to the guys you're speaking of. But it's interesting as I'm listening to you guys. I'm like, you know what? I watched those guys, but by that point, if the Browns won, I was celebrating, and if the Browns lost, I didn't want to even watch anything.
You wouldn't have, because they would have been going opposite your game. At the time of when you were in your youth, they would never have done a Browns game unless it was a Super Bowl. They wouldn't have done it.
Sure.
Or the rare cross-conference game. So you wouldn't have heard it. It wouldn't have been synonymous. And so if we put this up on the poll, they probably will not get the amount of love that you'd think in this market because it wasn't synonymous with watching their great football teams. So I think that's probably a very good point out of you, Gibbe. If you put it between the three, it's interesting because they're all kind of a generation separate. Like Michael's obviously the oldest of the bunch, and then Nance, who got the CBS gig in the late 80s. He's been the face of CBS. He got it when he's 25. He's been doing it all this time. It's unbelievable. And he has called the most important things in my life from the fact that he calls the NFL, the Masters, and the NCAA tournament. So these are my favorite sporting events, and he's covered them. Whereas Joe Buck has done everything, and it's a lot similar. It's very similar to the Nance story, where he got the big seat at Fox in his 20s, and has been the only real face of Fox football. He's been the only face.
It's funny because when you say Jim Nance,
Masters.
I probably have my immediate flashes are in either order: Masters and March Madness.
Mm-hmm.
And then NFL. And I realize he's the best. But he is the only one who does the Masters. He is the only one who does March Madness. And so it's funny because he is really, CBS afternoon, national game is usually the highest rated non-primetime game of every season, every year. And so he is in many ways the voice of the NFL, but Buck and Aikman are certainly the voice, and they've been together longer because it's gone from Nance and Sims to Nance and Romo now. And I think
Correct.
Nance and Romo to me still are the best broadcast team in football right now. If I had to rank them, I probably would go Nance, Romo, I would go Alan, Chris, and then I would go Joe and Troy. But we're talking about, we're splitting hairs between, the 85 Bears and the 88 Niners and, the 92 Cowboys. I mean, they're all tremendous.
It's a golden era where you have three that are A-pluses. There's three groups that are heading each one that's A-pluses. The answer to me would be Al, because as a kid, Monday Night Football, as long as I could remember Monday Night Football, when it really mattered to be on Monday Night Football, it was him and Gifford. And why am I blanking?
Cosell.
Deerdorf.
Deerdorf. Cosell was when I was really little, but I don't really remember that. But it was Deerdorf, Gifford, and Michaels forever.
Yeah.
And then from that, then they launch NBC Sunday Night Football, I believe, with him. So it's him and Madden that launches Sunday Night Football on NBC. So he has been the primetime voice of the NFL for my entire life.
And he's the one, when I think of him, and not to diminish his other accomplishments, obviously the Olympics. I think of the Olympics when I think of Al Michaels, but I think of football first with him.
Yes.
And with Joe Buck, I do think football, but you also think baseball. Joe Buck and Tim McCarver. And then, as I mentioned with Nance, just because he's such a stud, I mean, you're on the number one rated football broadcast. You do March Madness and you do the Masters. Why? Because you're just great at what you do. Congrats. Tip of the cap.
Think about every fourth year, he does the Super Bowl, the Masters, and the Final Four within 90 days.
Yep. Well, look at what Buck this week crazy. Has been doing. What?
Right. World Series and
football Sunday, football Monday, World Series. He had like 7 games in 7 straight days.
Yeah. No, it's a golden era right now. It's a really strong era for broadcasters. I think a lot of the B teams are great too. I think there's a lot of really talented guys out there, and I think Tirico was headed that way, and he'll be the one that probably replaces Al. But I really enjoyed him on Monday Night Football when he did it. So I think there's a ton of really talented guys.
Tirico's going to be great. Ian Eagle's great.
Yep.
Gus Johnson, I love his style. I think he's as fun as it gets.
Kevin Harlan, baby.
Harlan's great.
Fox has got a strong group.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Charles Davis is working with Ian Eagle now. Is that what that is?
Yeah, he's
on the
CBS
number
2 team.
That's got to be great.
Strong.
I haven't gotten to hear them. That's fantastic.
Team.
What happened with Fouts?
They did our game against Baltimore.
Yeah, they did. They moved Davis from Fox. They got it. Remember, we had Charles on at the Combine,
right.
and they moved him over to
I love
CBS,
Ian Eagle,
and he's
the
on the number
Birdman.
2.
He's great.
Those guys are good. There's a lot of really good guys. So if you say the voice of the NFL right now, and you limit it, then you obviously know who the 3 are. If you want to add the 4th, then it's Summerall would be the 4th for me.
Let me rephrase this question.
Even though he's been out for a long time.
The Browns are in the Super Bowl. Of the 3 teams that are out there right now, who do you want calling that game? I want Nance and Romo.
I want Al.
I want Al.
Al's my
Collinsworth.
Yep, I want Al.
Nance is
I love Nance.
You know what? That might be too close to call for me.
And Romo to me, though, is definitely the best analyst.
He's doing something that nobody else had done at this point. Like, he's got a lot of the Herb Street qualities, and that he's really likable. He clearly has fun with it, and he brought a style that you hadn't seen before. You'd never seen somebody who was tipping plays. I mean, that hadn't happened. That usually, and in fact, and one last point on this, I know we're up against it, Gibby. It takes a lot for Nance to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because he's stepping on what Nance is going to describe over and over. They don't do it quite as much as they did when he first came up. But that takes you got to have a lot of security, and when you're living at Pebble Beach, you do. But that's a lot of putting your ego aside to let somebody else get the glory in that sense. And Nance, to his credit, does that on a regular basis. That's a fun one. That, of course, was brought to you by Ohio Lottery. Go to keepitfunohio.com. At the bottom of the hour, we hit a little bit of higher, lower, better, or worse. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
University Hospital Seidman Cancer Center. First of all, what a title that is. What a great introduction. What great just to have you here at this time. But Dr. Tegnos, again, thank you so much. As you know, it's Crucial Catch Month in the NFL, and we've talked so much about regular screenings, early detection, how important that can be. And when we all think we've all been touched by cancer, and the Browns family recently was touched very, very closely by cancer. So let's just start with what we can do to mitigate against this awful disease with regular screenings.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for having me on, and really appreciate the opportunity, to talk about this. So, as you said, it's really crucial to catch cancer early. When you look at our ability as doctors to successfully treat cancer, the earlier you catch it, the more likely you are to cure it. So, really being aware of the screening tests that are out there, being educated about them, and making sure that you meet those guidelines so that you protect yourself and your family from ever letting this disease get out of control. So I think the things to remember for the men out there that are listening to the show, starting colon cancer screening at the age of 45 is appropriate. So and at 45, you can start by doing some testing for colon cancer. It's recommended that men between the ages of 45 and 50 have a colonoscopy done. And if it's a normal, clean colonoscopy, you don't have to have it again for 10 years. So that's a big reassurance there. And that should be repeated until a man reaches about 75 years of age. And then obviously for women, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So women should receive annual mammograms until they reach the age of 55, and then you can go down to every other year mammograms. But those are very important in catching the most common cancers that affect women as well. So this is all about the Browns family, men, women, and making sure that these screens are done in the appropriate manner.
And as you mentioned, it is critical and crucial to catch this stuff early. So do your screenings. And 2020 is a year really unlike any that we have ever seen. And I can only imagine the challenges, for patients and for your staff to maintain their safety during, with the COVID-19 pandemic happening. What is UH doing with that in mind, especially at Seidman?
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important topic, because in March and April, we had to shut down some of our cancer screening. In fact, all of our cancer screening, because those were determined, to be elective procedures. So we're very concerned that men and women in our community have delayed the screens, and obviously some of them had to. So make sure that if you were delayed, that you get those cancer screenings done. So we did shut those down, but we've ramped those back up again, and it's very safe to enter back into a healthcare environment. For a period of time, we allowed no visitors at all in the hospital because we were very concerned about infection to our staff as well as to patients. But we've now allowed visitors back in. Everybody has to wear a mask when they come into the healthcare facility, but it's a very safe zone, and everybody is screened prior to coming into our facilities.
And you mentioned people are able to come back, but they must wear masks. We've heard many people talk about it, but I think whenever you get an expert of your level, it's always great to have it reinforced why it is so important for people to wear their masks.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, they're one of the most amazing studies that I saw recently was a study where they looked at countries where mask wearing was mandated in Europe. Beginning in Europe, but then also in regions of the United States where there was, mask wearing that was mandated. And the drop in the infection rate was dramatic and unequivocal. So there's no question that is the single best thing that we can do to protect ourselves and our fellow Clevelanders, from catching this virus.
The Browns off to a great start, doing great things on the field, doing great things in the community. And I know you had the players for a virtual visit last week. What was that like?
Oh, that was terrific. So, every year our patients and I should say our staff and then our patients really look forward to having the Browns come visit. And, this year was different, obviously, because they couldn't come in person.
1 minute.
Special. A lot of patients got to see them on Zoom. Our staff was thrilled to have them host, and they were so kind and genuine. And the amount of support that they gave our patients was really remarkable. One thing that I can tell you, even though, it's been a challenge without visitors in the hospital and whatever, our staff has just stepped up so much. And believe it or not, our patient experience
30.
at the hospital is at the highest level it's ever been. And that's because people are stepping in the gap. They're filling in for family members. And the Browns did just that too. They were just amazing, incredibly kind and generous, and the patients just loved them.
Well, Dr. Teknos, we thank you so much for your time, for the great work that you do at the Seidman Cancer.
Stand by.
Obviously, for the great partnership between university hospitals and the Browns, and for sharing this very important message and this very important knowledge with our listeners today.
Thank you for having me, and go Browns.
You're up.
Absolutely. And Rumpke Waste and Recycling, family owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. Their customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. Coming up next, a little higher, lower, better, or worse, just right, sweet spot. Gribbs will join. Have a little fun coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Time for a little higher or lower, or is it better or worse? Is it just right, or is it the sweet spot? It's brought to you by Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, the nation's largest medical school, preparing future generations, physicians, pharmacists, dentists, and we are now joined by our good friend, our Brown senior staff writer, Sir Andrew Gribble, joining in on the Fifth Third Money Line. Welcome in, my friend, and welcome in, Gibby. Gibby, the floor is yours.
Hi, how are y'all?
Oh, we're well.
Everybody
Yeah,
good?
we're
well.
Everybody, it still looks like crap outside. It looked like crap when
It's
I
awful.
came to work, and it's still crap
Still
here.
gray.
So,
Still gray.
that being said, let's bring a little joy and sunshine into everyone's lives on a Tuesday afternoon. This is higher or lower compliments this week of NFL.com's Dan Hanzus. Should the following teams be higher, closer to number 1, or closer to number 32, which would be lower, or are they ranked just right?
Hey,
First-
Gibby, is 32 a higher number than 7?
Not in this game.
Oh.
Oh.
We make you
But
think.
is reality, is real life happen before tape delay or after?
Ask
tape
me
delay?
on Wednesday nights.
After.
Let's get
According to
right
Gibby.
into
On
it.
Wednesday night. Good job out of you, Gibby. Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
First and foremost, Gribble, we'll start with you. I want from each one of you your top 3 teams in the NFL through 6 games. Gribble, the floor is yours.
Yeah, this one was a little bit tougher than I would have expected, but yeah, I'm going to go with the consensus here that the Kansas City Chiefs are the number 1 team. They have the best quarterback, and honestly, I think they've got kind of a sneaky good defense. It's a little bit Jekyll and Hyde, but they can show up and they've shut some teams down. I thought they shut down Josh Allen pretty well yesterday. They shut down Lamar Jackson. I think that they've got that sneaky good defense that just sometimes takes some games off. But I think they rise up there for the better games. My number 2 team is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I know that their defense is not good, but they've got Russell Wilson, and that tells me that they're going to be in any game no matter what, and I like their chances in most of those games. And then number 3 for me is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that their defense is really good. It's legit. I think they're going to very much miss Devin Bush, but to this point, they're 5-0. They're playing really well, and I think that they've created an offense that might be the best suited for a player like Ben Roethlisberger. We're seeing a lot of these quarterbacks at this age in some offenses where they've had to make some adjustments. I think the Steelers have made the best adjustments for him right now.
Zagura.
I'd like to let Beau Bishop have the floor, and
No.
I want to challenge myself today in the role of talking last every time and seeing if I can
Do
come
it
up with
last every
something new.
time.
Beau, the
Zagura's
floor
up.
is yours.
He's the boss. I can't. He's the head honcho. It says so on his desk. I appreciate the gesture. It's a kind gesture.
It's really more. I want to test my mettle as
No,
a big
you
B.
get nothing like it.
Huge,
Spaulding. I'll
huge
turn
B.
your mic off.
Listen, it's simple.
I just turned his mic off. How about that? His mic's off.
For usurping you? But now I have to talk.
No. Let's go, Z.
I'm winning. I just won that because you silenced me, which is what I was trying to do. So you played right into my hand again. Yes. But the
Keep
top
the
3
meter.
teams
I don't
are
know
all
how to
in the
talk about
AFC. Chiefs, numero 1. Steelers, numero 2. And Titans, numero 3. All of them can play defense. All of them can score. You can't make that same statement about the other teams. Not only that, all 3 can win regardless of game flow, which, again, you cannot say about the other teams, which would be the Seahawks and or the Ravens.
Bishop.
I want to see Seattle coming off of the bye and see if their defense gets back on track. But it's been so bad. Russell's unbelievable. I still feel good about them in the NFC. I would go Kansas City number 1. I would go Tennessee number 2, and they can beat you anyway, and they got a little edge to them now. Tannehill playing at an MVP level. Derrick Henry is just a full day, and it seems like probably every 2 or 3 games he breaks off a 75-yard run, and it's just amazing. And they're really good defensively, and I think Vrabel's a genius, and now he's got a little thing that he can kind of use to motivate them. The world's against us. I think that works, and I have Pittsburgh 3 as well, along with you guys. Pittsburgh, they're real. That's a real deal. The fact that they got Chase Claypool, who looks like an AFC DK Metcalf, and now we got to deal with that. It's just, where do they get these? He's the 11th receiver picked, man. The 11th receiver picked. That's not right.
Wild. Stylistically, I think the Steelers are the best built to handle the Titans. because of
We'll see.
what they do. And
Sunday.
now with Luan out, you take Conklin away, who's now a Brown, Luan's out, that has to have an impact on them going forward.
I would think, yeah.
All right, up next.
Just to run a little devil's advocate on this. I mean, we're talking about how excited we are about the Titans this week, and it's after they squeaked out a game with the Texans, who we all agree stink. I mean, I just that's the thing where I think we should have been more excited.
Well, it's
about
what they did with Buffalo too.
And they had to come off of a
it's a couple in a
Tuesday,
row.
super short week, Tuesday to Sunday.
Yeah.
I agree they're good. I just think that people are excited about them because they played the one interesting game this Sunday.
Yeah.
That's
Is this week's overreaction game of the week?
Ryan Tannehill's been the best quarterback in the NFL, period, by any measure. Better than Mahomes. Every stat, touchdown passes, efficient, all of it, since taking over the starting job. The best in the NFL. Because ain't no Tannehill.
He's playing unbelievable. It make you take a flyer on Sam Darnold if you needed a quarterback because you just wonder if it's Gase.
What I do. All right.
Good point, Bo.
In the
I
NFL, in the NFL.com power poll, the Browns are ranked 15th. Should they be higher, lower, or are they just right, Zegura?
Well, we're going to find out. I'm going to say it is the sweet spot. You've got the Raiders ahead of you, 2 spots who you're going to get at home, a game that you've got to win. Again, I still feel like we should be able to beat the Cardinals, although they lambasted us a year ago. I like it better when we're talking about us having to earn more respect, so I'm fine with it. Sweet spot.
Bo.
Yeah, the only one that I would question ahead of us is just what New England is right now. I mean, I know we got blasted by Pittsburgh, but New England, that was pretty ugly. Losing at home to Denver the way that they did. But it's the sweet spots where I can't put us better than Arizona and the Raiders at this point. So I think 15, top half of the league, just ahead of Indy. That's fine.
Gribble, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's right for now. I mean, you can't. It's just when you lose the way the Browns did on Sunday, you don't have much of an argument to make in these kind of power polls. I just think that the Browns are going to bounce back, and I think there are teams that I think the Browns will be better than on this list that are ahead of them right now. I think the Raiders and Cardinals, both of them, I think the Browns are better than. But you just got to go out and prove it again because you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt after this past Sunday.
All right, let's get things going with Dan Hansis' power poll. Next, Jordan Climack.
Higher or lower?
All right. Number 1 in Dan's power poll, Kansas City, which all of you basically agreed with. Number 2 is Pittsburgh at 5-0. Higher or lower? Bo?
Well, when we did our top 3, I had them third. So I guess
when you already asked this question
they
before.
would be lower when I
Minor detail.
articulated my thoughts on this moments ago.
This is like tape delay before real life. This is what happens.
They could either be, on Wednesday Night Live, they can be second or third. It doesn't really matter to me. They are in the top 3. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to quibble over one spot.
Gribble?
Yeah, I just had them a spot lower. I think that I still like in a head-to-head matchup right now, if it's the Seahawks and Steelers, I'm taking the Seahawks because I think that they've got the superior quarterback. That's just knowledge. But both are really good. They've established themselves as an elite team right now.
Go ahead, Z.
Well, you should know the answer to this.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention when you were talking.
Do I agree or disagree? Since it's
earlier.
also agree or disagree is part of the thing. Do I agree or disagree that the Steelers are number 2, Gibby?
Are they better or worse?
Do I agree or disagree that they're number 2?
How about me, huh? Higher or lower?
I can't answer that question because it's sweet spot. I agree they are number 2. And I'm on the record as saying that on this particular program.
Let's go.
5 minutes ago.
Low 3 minutes ago. That's correct.
Minor detail. Next.
Higher or lower?
Let's go to ranking number 6 since I've managed to screw this up already.
No,
today.
Gibby, you're making it thrive.
Tennessee
So
is
great.
3rd. 4th is Baltimore. 5th are the Seahawks. 6th are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That being said, should they be higher, lower, or are they just right? Bo, since I screwed it up earlier, I'll give you the floor here. I'll go back to back with you
Thanks.
here.
I really
number 1.
appreciate that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that consideration. Look, by the way that you guys know I do this week to week, I've got a steady track record of doing this week to week. Do I think the Green Bay Packers are probably a better team than the Bucs? Yeah, I probably think they are. But by the fact that the Packers just got housed by the Bucs this week, there's no way that I can have them ahead of them. Beyond that, you look at who's behind that. It's the Buffalo Bills. Well, I think they're better than the Bills right now. They're better than the Rams right now. I think they're probably right where they need to be in that sweet spot, sitting there at number 6. Their defense is really good. They're winning without even getting the receivers going at all. They get nothing out of Godwin and Evans, and that's because of injury. But Jones has run for 100, I think, in 4 straight games, 3 straight games. Yeah, the Bucs, yeah, sweet spot, 6.
Gribble, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, the win was impressive this last week, and their defense is very good. If there's a team I like better, I mean, I agree with Beau. I think long term, I think the Packers are a better team, and I'll quibble with. I think the Bills are better than right now because the Bills lost to the teams that we agree are in the top 3, the Titans and the Chiefs, and they've just had a weird couple of weeks. So I like the Bills better than Bucs, but the Bucs defense very much impressed me this week.
Zegura.
Yes. TB. What great initials. TB Tampa Bay. TB Tom Brady. TB Taco Bell. Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Right.
The Bucs are looking absolutely delightful after that big win, the rousing victory over the other Bay team from Green. And they are going to be green on my rankings. They are going lower because they're better, which is higher, whatever it means. They're better than this. Right now, they beat the Ravens. And what was it that I saw that caused this seismic shift? It's not just how great the defense is playing. It's Bruce Arians saying, I can adjust. Did you notice a quicker passing game? Shorter passes, doing the things that Tom Brady's been so great at his whole career. Adaptation is the key to success. Just ask Madonna. And that's what they're doing, and that's why the Bucs are better than even number 6. They're better than the Ravens because they can win any game script because they haven't even got those receivers involved yet.
Next.
Higher or lower?
Number 7, the Green Bay Packers. That takes us to number 8. I know we've talked a little bit about them, but it is the Buffalo Bills. I continue to refuse to buy into them. They are 4-2. Should they be higher or lower? Gribble, the floor is yours.
Well, this is a tricky one because I just said that they should be higher than the Buccaneers, but I do like the Los Angeles Rams a little bit better than the Bills. So I don't know how to answer this. I think the Bills are better than than the Bucs, but I think let's just settle for just right then. Right?
Zegura.
I think they are, in fact, just right. They did beat the Rams, albeit with a little help from the officials after blowing a massive early lead. An
egregious pass interference call.
Egregious. Nonetheless, I think they're right. I don't know if you remember last week, I said they were 8th. They were in the top 8 in the NFL. And that's what I said that before this game against Kansas City. I still believe it is true. Allen had a little bit of the struggles in the rain. I thought there were guys still open. He just missed some of them. That's going to come, but they're still number 8, and I think they're a team that will continue. Stephon Diggs changed that team. That was one of the best offseason moves, and it's worked out for both sides because Justin Jefferson looks tremendous for Minnesota and is a lot cheaper, but Diggs has been great for the Bills.
Bishop?
I'm going to go worser from the standpoint of where they are right now. They can't run it real good because they have injuries. Singletary hurt. They're not able to establish a ground game, which is hurting Allen in the pass game. Brown had 4 targets, but was really not himself coming back from injury. That affects them a great deal. And Allen's inaccuracy is a real problem. It is a real problem. Like, he can throw a deep ball to a guy to run under it, but he's not great on everything underneath. And he misses guys that are open, and he can throw the ball right to you. I mean, there should have been a pick 6 on one of those where Kansas City, I think he was just surprised he threw it right to him. He could have walked in for a touchdown. So I think they're still – I would have them below the Rams and the Saints right now, even though they beat the Rams head-to-head on that egregious pass interference. I think once they get healthy, they'll be fine. But their defense isn't what it was last year either, the last couple of weeks. They played really good teams, I get it. But they're going to play some more really good teams. Look at this next stretch for them. I think they still play Seattle, New England. It's a tough stretch for them.
Next.
Higher or lower?
All right, 2 for each one of you. I need to know if the Bears, who are ranked 11th, should be higher or lower. Just in front of them, the Saints at 10, the Rams at 9. So I need to know if the Bears should be higher or lower. And then I want your team, who is the 31st team in the NFL because we all know the Jets are simply the worst. Zegura, we'll start with you.
I cede my time to the gentleman from Montana.
You're not getting time back.
Sad for
care.
the people.
He doesn't care.
Sad for the people.
He did it for the people. Look, I have to start believing in the Bears. They went to Carolina, and they beat Teddy Two Gloves. They beat them. They are 5-1. They beat the Bucs the week before. Like, they're really good defensively. They handle their business. I don't believe in them necessarily long term, but they're 5-1, and you are what your record are, and they've beaten. That's two impressive wins back to back, and I can't have them below New England or the Raiders at this point, or even the Cardinals for that matter. As for my second worst team in the NFL, I'm going to go with the football team. But there's a lot of candidates for this.
Yes, there are. Gribble, what say you?
Yeah, I'll put the Bears a little bit higher because at this point, when you get to 5-1, I have nothing but respect for to get to that point. Even though I know you guys had quite a victory parade last week about the Panthers, and they came back to reality this week with their situation.
Oh,
but,
blow.
Wow.
My 31st team, I agree with Dan Anderson. I think the Jaguars. I think Week 1 was a bit of a fluke against the Colts, and now they're coming back to reality and really what they wanted to be this year. I think they want to be the team with the number 1 pick, and I think they're heading in that direction, but the Jets are going to be a tough out for that one.
Zegura, real quick.
The Bears are better. They're 5-1. They play a tough 3-game stretch. Even if they go 1-2, that still puts them at 6-3 after 9 games. That's legit any way you slice it. Period. End of story. Nick Foles is a winner. Did you see his post game? Did you see that? How do you not love that guy? Guy's a winner.
Yeah.
Love him. 31st team in the NFL. I'm going to say the Cowboys. I realize that probably they are better than the football team and the Giants, but it is just a complete debacle. And to get so little from so much is a stunning achievement. So bravo.
That's going to wrap
Bravo
up
to
this
you.
week's Higher or Lower. We'll try to be a
All
little
right, good
better
stuff,
next week,
Gribbs.
but I make
Great
no
talking to you,
promises.
buddy.
Gribbs.
That is Sir Andrew joining on the Fifth Third Money Line. A reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so on the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Nominations for the 2020 Helmets program are now being accepted. Zenith invites you to nominate your Ohio high school to receive $25,000 worth of new Zenith helmets. Visit promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. Give us the results of the poll there, Gibbe.
Yeah, 300 votes in just a half hour. Not too shabby.
Nice.
Al Michaels, your winner, 54.2%. Jim Nance, 38.5%, and everybody hates Joe Buck, which I'll never understand because I really like Joe Buck.
why?
And
He's the
good guy.
best.
You know why? Because
He's a really nice guy.
in 2016, everybody's like he was pro-Cubs. He wasn't pro-Indians.
Joe Buck
Whatever.
is great, and anybody who watched that celebrity watch party or whatever, he was tremendous on that. Before we go, can I leave you guys with an inspirational story from none other than Nick
Please.
Cage? The great Nick Cage was asked last time he gambled, and he says, and I quote, "The last time I gambled was about 30 years ago. I was in the Bahamas, and I walked into a casino, and I felt like I had my mojo with me, like nothing could go wrong." Classic Cage. "My game was roulette. I went in with 200. I didn't miss a number, so much that even the lady spinning the wheel said nothing sweeter than a repeater. In 20 minutes, I turned $200 into $20,000. So I went and found an orphanage in the Bahamas, met all the kids and the headmistress, and said, 'This is for you.' I put the 20 grand in her hand, walked away, and I've never gambled again because if I did, it would ruin the power of that moment." Nick Cage.
Nick Cage, Renaissance man. Fantastic. What a job of you. I told you there was so much.
So much!
Next level coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.